As a service organization in the Canon business, we contribute very directly to the overarching business strategy by aligning ourselves to the evolving customer needs. That's something you will recognize again and again. Customers are changing, markets are changing. We need to align to that, and making sure our customers are equipped with the tools they need to do business and help our customers to grow and be successful. That is almost the baseline of our strategic approach, I would say. Then with a goal to offer a very tailored support that is aligned to our customers' business needs and be recognized as a true partner by our customers.
Hello, welcome to the Unscripted Podcast, where you'll find discussions on what matters most in service, leadership, and business transformation. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. Let's jump in. Today, we're going to be taking an inside look at Canon's 5-pillar service strategy. I'm excited to welcome to the podcast today Andy Schneider, who is the European Vice President of Services and Support at Canon. Andy, welcome to the Unscripted Podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. Yeah, it's great to have you. So before we get into our 5 pillars and talk a little bit about what's going on from a service perspective within the business, just tell everyone a little bit more about yourself, anything you want to share about your background, your role, etc.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So within Canon EMEA, I'm responsible for the services and support function in the DP&S business unit. DP&S stands for Digital Printing and Solutions, and that covers our markets for production print on one hand and for the workspace printing area. Product-wise, workspace is the traditional office environment, as you recognize that, with single-function printers, multifunctional printing devices, also document scanning solutions and workflow solutions, really where we enable our customers to improve their collaboration and efficiency in today's physical and hybrid work environment that we have in offices. On the other hand, production print, Canon, we are a market leader in the production print area where we provide technology, services, and solutions for print provider, covering all kinds of materials and applications, be it book printing or posters that are used in retail, direct mailing, flyers, label printing, up to use cases like wallpapers that are used for interior decor. And my responsibility is for the full services life cycle for the business unit. So that starts usually with the design of a solution, on the service design, the implementation of solutions, and then the customer service and field service activities, where approximately 1/3 of the total workforce of the business unit is very traditional field service engineers.
Okay, great. So for anyone listening, we reach a variety of industries, right? So for any listeners that might be unfamiliar with the printing industry, can you just talk a little bit about the trajectory of your space and what makes Canon's business unique?
Yeah, absolutely. Canon, we see ourselves really in 3 core areas as strongly differentiated in our market. First of all, it's the breadth across different markets and industries. I already talked before about workspace and production. That covers a wide range of products, as you can imagine. And with a lot of these applications, we are able to enable lots of business with technology and solutions to optimize their business again. So we are really an enabler for different businesses. And really most sectors you can imagine are still printing, even though that might sometimes not feel like it. So be it areas like healthcare or education, legal and finance, that's a typical workspace areas, to book publishers. We have some of the largest global e-commerce brands as customers, graphic designers, interior designers. I mean, the range is really wide. What is interesting is that a lot of these customers use multiple products and solutions from Canon because we have this breadth of technology. And that, together with our reputation and our approach in service, is really what differentiates us in the market. Now, secondly, that is our approach to service. That's clearly the second strong differentiator. And one of the core elements, again, as we are an enabler of businesses, is that we understand the impact of downtime of products for our customers. That starts with the design of the products and the technology, the organization, how we approach it to handle if something goes wrong, the quality, the education, the skills of our workforce that enables us to provide these services. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that. And the third pillar I would like to mention here in our industry that is a big topic, and that is sustainability. And again, we can go a little bit deeper. Printing is a business where sustainability is always a topic. And we understand the importance not only for ourselves and our responsibility we have, but also for our customers. And we have multiple programs and initiatives that we're running, again, to focus internally, to look at our environmental footprint, but also to help our customers through different activities.
Mm-hmm. So what about some of the external factors? Like, I'm just thinking there's obviously been an evolution of workspace, right? Both from a technology perspective, but also in more recent years, more people working remotely, hybrid work environments, things like that. Is the other side of the business, the more commercial side, I don't know if that's the wrong terminology, but more of the large scale stuff, is that offsetting some of the changes in the workspace side? Or is it more so that some of those industries you mentioned have had less impact on workplace use?
I wouldn't say it's offsetting. Clearly, the production area, and we can talk about that in more depth, has a lot of growth potential for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that market is very traditional analog printing nowadays. But it's not necessarily offsetting on the workspace side, because even though absolutely the very traditional office environment is changing and is changing a lot with hybrid offices, with digital workflows and processes. And we talk about the paperless office since, 30 years, definitely since before I was in that industry.
But there's still paper.
There's still paper, exactly. Yeah. There's still many areas where there is paper. Even if the printed volumes might become less, there are lots of areas where paper is still very relevant. So the relevance of printing for these processes is probably even more important than it used to be.
Yeah.
And growth potential, absolutely, in that.
Yeah. And to your point, even within that, it's only one segment. You mentioned healthcare, finance, education, some of those that are less impacted by any changes in work environment, et cetera. So that makes sense. Okay. So Canon has 5 pillars to its strategy. We're going to talk a little bit about each of those. The first is to focus on solution growth. So can you talk a bit about that?
Absolutely. So probably before we go too much into the solutions topic, I think it's important. These 5 pillars are really, we defined them in a way to help us empower our customers with innovative technology, solutions, and our exceptional support. So it's really a high degree of customer orientation in our approach, I would say. And as a service organization in the Canon business, we contribute very directly to the overarching business strategy by aligning ourselves to the evolving customer needs. That's something you will recognize again and again. Customers are changing, markets are changing. We need to align to that, making sure our customers are equipped with the tools they need to do business and help our customers to grow and be successful. That is almost the baseline of our strategic approach, I would say. Then with a goal to offer a very tailored support that is aligned to our customers' business needs and be recognized as a true partner by our customers. Now, talking about solutions specifically, there are a few challenges if we look at a solutions business versus the traditional services business. And I think many companies might recognize that. And there's 2 things I would like to talk about here. Probably the biggest challenge that we have is it's about shifting the conversations we have with our customers from transaction to more of a transformation. It's not just about selling a printer with a service contract, but it's about partnering with our customers to transform their processes, their business, whatever it is they need. and really have the more in-depth conversation with our partners. And yes, we hopefully still install some printers at that customer with services around that, but it's talking about business benefits and about efficiency and really changing the perception from the short-term cost view to a value-based approach. I think that is probably the core and also the challenge of, as you can imagine, because that requires quite a different approach in customer communication, in the language we use, in the sales approach. So it's really the whole customer interface that needs to change to be successful with that.
Yeah. So a couple questions on this one. If you think about the more transactional space, so you sell printers and service those printers, can you just give a couple of examples? I know you said it's tailored to customer needs, but when you think about what beyond that makes up the solution play, like, can you give an example or two of how Canon is taking that core aspect of product and services and expanding beyond that?
Absolutely. So if we look, for example, in the traditional office environment, and that's nothing completely new. Traditionally, you had a number of printers that the employees used to print their document. These printers had a service contract. If the printer was broken, then you had an agreed service level agreement that said within 4 hours or 8 hours or next business day, an engineer is on site to repair a printer. Nowadays, we're selling a printing solution that includes usually a piece of software. It includes fleet management that gives the customer's IT department or a service provider an opportunity to monitor the devices. And for the end customer, so the employee of the company that would like to print something, that creates a lot of new opportunities. So if one specific printer is not working, that's not really an issue because somewhere in the building there's a different printer. And the software can automatically allow the employee to use their printer without any manual intervention by the employee. And then the reaction time of how long does it take until the engineer is there to repair the device suddenly becomes less of a conversation topic, if that makes sense. That is one area. So it's really about selling a solution to print, as we call that, and then more than anything else. And there's thinking ahead, there's lots of opportunity where that can still go in that business, of course, with where our work environment is moving.
Okay, good. So really, it's more about, well, uptime in a sense, right? Not necessarily of a specific piece of equipment, but of the ability to perform the needed task. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Now, going back to some of the challenges that you mentioned, because I do think this is a journey that companies across industries are on, right? Sort of evolving beyond that transaction-centric service to more of a value-based conversation and outcomes-based conversation. What have you found to be the biggest challenge in that transition?
I think it's two ways. It's the internal challenges, I would say, on one hand, where we need to make sure we have the skills and capabilities in the workforce. We have the systems in place that allow us to take that approach. We have an identified new terminology and language that we use. That's often quite a challenge if you're a long time in a business. And then you need to bring that to the market. And again, using that example I used before, it's interesting. So we have cases where customers are willing to buy a full solution, fully managed, and still they require a 4-hour SLA for a field service engineer to be on site. We then go in a conversation with the customer and say, well, that just increases your cost without adding a lot of value. But then it's a mindset shift also on the customer side that needs to happen there. So it's really a bit on both sides, I would say.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think, how is this changing the revenue model associated with service? So is it still they buy the equipment and it's a service contract, but it's just including more, or is that changing as well?
That is changing as well. Absolutely. We see that as in many industries. So In printing, we had a very service-oriented business model, I would say, for a long time, where the customers were either buying or leasing the device and made a service contract. And the service contract pricing very often was usage-based. That's this commonly known as the click pricing in our industry. So for each print the cost that the end customer is doing, they pay a price, and that price covers the costs for the consumables, so for the toner and for the service contract. And that is a bit changing. On one hand, we move to, again, more value-based fixed revenue streams. So where the service pricing is not based on the usage of the device anymore, but a fixed monthly fee, just for an ability to print, really. And then as the next step, also we talk about offerings like print as a service that have quite a high acceptance rate in certain markets already, that are fully flexible, where you basically pay a monthly fee for a number of devices, and the end customers get quite a lot of flexibility based on the changing needs in their business.
Yeah. And so that makes sense because there's different, I guess, concentrations of this type of evolution in different businesses. And sometimes it's more of like an incremental progression of adding things to the contract or focusing more on selling contracts, but it's not really changing the service delivery model or the revenue model behind it. And when you get to the point where you are doing that, which I think is where the bigger opportunity lies, it brings about a lot more of that fundamental change that you mentioned. Then you have challenges on both sides. And those challenges are really just, I think, grounded in a lot of familiarity with how the business has traditionally been done, internally and externally, right? So it's a process of really redefining that and getting people comfortable with a new way and how it benefits both parties and how it works. And there's a whole lot of work to be done to enable you to do that internally, as you said, but then also to help customers understand the discomfort of doing something different, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And it takes time at the end. That's the thing. That's not a transition that happens within a year or 2 years. That's really a very long-term change that is really happening. Yeah.
I don't know how you're viewing this, but one of the things that I've talked about before is I think oftentimes when you talk about this journey, people think in binary terms, right? It's our business is this, i.e. the old way, or it's this, the new way. But for a period of time, and that time can be quite long, it can be both, right? You can look for, you're always going to have customers, whether it's by segment or just individual customers that are more modern in their thinking. You're going to have customers who want to do the new thing, where you can work with them to build it out and also build some success. And you're going to have customers that are more resistant to change that will take longer to progress through. So I think that's something people don't always think about is it's this or this. I think customers or companies on this journey, a lot of times for quite a while, it's both. And it's finding the opportunities to evolve and learning as you go while these other people get closer to being ready to join that.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Yes.
Yeah. But it's, to your point, I mean, it's significant work, and it's work that takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes tenacity and all of those things. So absolutely. Okay. The second pillar to talk about is related to one of your specific customer segments, which is graphic arts. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, yes. So graphic arts is one of the core growth segments in the overarching production business environment. And it is, I would say, our core target segment also for our production business. And again, I talked about different applications before. And if I look at Canon's technologies that we bring to the market, they all enable different or more new capabilities for the end customer. So different substrates that are used, different textures that are utilized to print on, different finishes. And that really helps the print service providers, our customers, to increase their diversity in application at the end, to grow their business, to differentiate more, to find new customers and be more successful. This market, this graphic arts market, I briefly mentioned it before, is, I would say, less mature than other parts of the printing industry. And literally in the middle of migration to digital print, there's still a large part of that market that is analog, traditional offset printing. And there's lots of benefits of going to digital in that market. It's the maintenance costs of the printers that are lower. There's more creative versatility for the print service provider. They can have much shorter print runs, individualized print runs, and faster print speed. So there's a lot of advantages. But to take advantage of these benefits, they often need to change their business model a bit as well. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why this transition as well is a very gradual shift that is happening in that market. But clearly, for us, there is a lot of room to grow in that business. It's at the same time, from a service point of view, also, I wouldn't say a completely new market, but it's clearly a high demanding market segment for us. And we need to invest and make sure we are prepared to address that market properly. We need to make sure our workforce has the skills and tools and expertise they need to fit the customer demands we see happening in that market. So it's about using lots of smart technologies, again, be it already built in our products, technology we use to remote service, to monitor printing devices, to provide proactive services, lots of analytics. And we need to make sure, again, we have the skills in the workforce, we have the tools in place, we have the processes that allow us to use that. Because as said, it's a competitive marketplace. You have a lot of these graphic card printers around 24/7 operations. So the service requirements are naturally very high. But it's not just the availability of people, it's also the service level agreements and the KPIs that measure. So I talked before about uptime of and availability of devices as important for these print service providers. But it's actually more than the uptime. It's also the speed in which they can produce and the quality of the end result. So if a print service provider needs to print, I don't know, 50,000 flyers for a high-end end customer, a luxury brand that does a special advertisement, they need to make sure these 50,000 prints look exactly the same. So definition of SLAs is changing as well. And that can be a challenge here and there. And we need to make sure we are prepared from a service point of view to deliver that.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious, going back to the point about offering solutions and being seen as a business partner, not just a equipment provider or service provider. In this space, because you mentioned the adoption of more modern technology also indicates a shift in how they do business. Do you see it as part of Canon's opportunity to educate them on those possibilities or act in a consultative way? Or do you think they have that knowledge and it's more so just meeting the need of the printing piece?
It's definitely part of our responsibility to educate the market. And I think that's a big part of our messaging to the market as well. So just a couple of months ago, there was in Europe Drupa, that's the world's largest printing event. And Canon we had one of the largest booths there at the event, where we showcased all our different technologies, but we were not there to show our technology. We showed applications. So it was very much around different print applications. And we brought in a lot of existing customers and prospects and just guided them around to show them what would be possible, because then that gives them, again, new opportunities how to develop their business. I used the example before about wallpaper printing and interior decor. That's something a couple of years ago, no one would have thought about this being a printing business. Nowadays, there are different of our customers that build a large business printing individualized wallpapers or even flooring for high-end retail spaces, things like that.
Yeah. It's interesting because, so with your answer in mind, that yes, you see it as part of Canon's responsibility to help them see what potential exists and also maybe transition through what that means for their business. Going back to your point about having the right people, it's interesting because again, this is where I think a lot of times there's a tendency to minimalize the layers of complexity here, because when you're taking not only your business model and evolving it, but then you're working to help customers evolve their business model and their operations. If you think about what that means in terms of the skill set needed in your workforce, it's entirely different than the skill set of a technician that can just show up to fix a piece of equipment and then leave, right? It's truly entirely different, right? So you're talking about needing to completely reimagine what that role looks like, what the skills are, how you train and enable that role, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this is why, to your point, these things take time, right? It's a lot of work to do to sort that all out and to get it right. And So the third pillar is around operational excellence. And so you mentioned a couple of times that to be able to progress through this journey, you have to have the right technological capabilities. You have to have the right people and the right skill sets, et cetera. So can you just talk about how you're looking at the role of operational excellence in being able to progress through this journey and what your focus areas are?
Absolutely. And I think overall, I always say operational excellence is probably the one area where we are very similar to many other service organizations. I think that's what most companies are dealing with in one way or another. And really for us, it's about using technology, not only technology, but it's a lot about technology as an enabler to, on one hand, drive this operational excellence. And this is always also about our cost to serve for the customer, of course, but it's as well about modernizing the customer experience. And I'm convinced these two things go hand in hand. So, for example, again, I guess like many companies, we're doing quite a lot of investments in areas of remote resolution and customer self-serve. And we do that in very close collaboration with customers and with feedback from customers, what works for them and what doesn't work for them. Because again, that is helping us on one side, on the cost to serve, but it's good for our customers as well. And it's also an area that starts with the design of the product. So if I go back to the workspace segment, for example, it's nowadays many more issues that might happen in a traditional office multifunctional printer can be easily resolved by the end customer directly. And it does not require a field service engineer to come on site. If it's a bit more complex, we can provide remote service capabilities. And if there is an issue at the machine, that means that the end customer doesn't wait 4 hours, 8 hours, or to the next day, but the problem is fixed within 10 minutes, for example. And that's a key part, again, for us and for our customers. And as you can imagine, there's different investment areas we're having there. And technology, I mentioned, but it's not just technology. It's also about our people, the skills of our people. And one of the career journeys, I would say, that we have implemented many years ago is we transition field service engineers that are very experienced on the devices into help desk role and ask them to provide remote service for the customers. That sounds like a very good idea and a very easy step, but very quickly you realize that engineer needs quite a different skill set because talking to a person, to a customer in person, physically at the device and over the phone requires some different skills. So you need to invest into the skills and capabilities of the people. Then it's about tools. As I said, we need to make sure we have the right tools. So starting again with the product, the design of the product, getting knowledge information accessible for the customer. I think that's one of the key things that customers, if they have an issue, they can easily find information. They can find articles. They can probably find videos that easily explain them how to deal with a certain challenge. It's about having remote diagnostics. So if there is an issue that we can immediately see where the problem might be at the device. Digital channels. So we're investing quite a lot in new digital channels, portals and functionality for the customers that make the interaction easy. So there's always quite a backlog, I would say, of digital investments you have as a business. We did quite a lot, but there's constantly more ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. The technology continues to advance and become more sophisticated and offer new opportunities. And so it's certainly an area at this point that is just one of continual innovation. So that makes sense. Okay. So the fourth pillar is the relevance of service, but I want to come back to that one. So let's skip ahead to number 5, which is sustainability. And you mentioned this a bit earlier. So looking at sustainability, both Canon's responsibility and commitment, and then also aiding your customers in their objectives. So can you share a bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say sustainability is very at the core of Canon's corporate philosophy, and really something that we are doing since forever, almost, I would say. And as you say, it's on one hand our own efforts for our own business, but also on the customer side. So we are highly committed to minimize the environmental impact of our business throughout the whole life cycle. So it starts with being very responsible in manufacturing, the usage of resources in manufacturing. It's about recycling. We were pioneering recycling solutions in our business already since the 90s. So we were really early with that. But then also in the service model. And I talked before about operational excellence, about remote services. There's a sustainability benefit as well, of course. If there's no engineer that needs to travel to the customer, there's also sustainability benefit there. But that's not all. We try to reuse refurbished spare parts, for example. There's quite a big program on refurbished and remanufactured devices that is highly accepted by the market. And we have customer segments that love these devices because we can give our products a second life. So there's a lot of things we're doing internally. The same is true on the customer side. And I mentioned before, printing is often not necessarily seen as a very environmental topic. Let me call it like this. So our customers are very conscious and aware about the environmental footprint that the printing has for their business. And so we help them by providing them, on one hand, eco-conscious solutions for print. Again, starts with the design of the product, power consumption, standby modes, things like that, but also guidance in how they can improve their environmental footprint. One of the traditional things we often do in large enterprise customers in the workspace segment, they're looking very much at their paper consumption, and one-sided or double-sided printing is constantly a topic. And and the owners of the print solution are very interested in ensuring that the employees print double-sided as much as possible. There are ways we can share data, we can guide them what works best to change the end user's behavior. And there's different examples like this where we help our customers as well.
That makes sense. Okay. So opportunities on both sides. And I'm sure with the customers being conscious, the more effort Canon is taking as a business that you can showcase to them, that helps as well. So coming back to the relevance of service, I wanted to save this one for last because I know you said it's nearest and dearest to your heart. So let's start with why this pillar is nearest and dearest for you.
I think my personal commitment to this, and it comes from a very deep-seated belief that I have, that services and support has the power to build customer loyalty and drive business success. It's not just a support function of the business. It can really be the core element of a business. But there's a bit of a hidden challenge in this, and that is for us to attract the best and brightest talents in a field that is often overshadowed by sales and marketing. So I'm really passionate to show this dynamic, high-tech nature of a modern service organization, and as a result, inspire the next generation of talents. I believe service is at the end about enabling long-term partnerships with our customers. I said that before. We are seen as partners by our customers. It's about being proactive, providing remote services. It's even about sustainability consulting in some areas. So it's not just going on site with a screwdriver and repairing a device. It's so much more. It's about being a trusted advisor to our customers and help our customers achieve their goals, again, across the whole product portfolio. And I think that's getting that message out to the market is a key responsibility we have as service leaders to attract future talents.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? The fact that the role has evolved and continues to evolve beyond just going on site to fix something is challenging in the sense of some of the workers that have been in these industries for a long time that are good at doing that don't necessarily want to do some of the things of what's required in the more modern role, right?
Mhm.
But the flip side of that is, and I think coming back to what you're saying is, I think the evolution gives us an opportunity to bring in different people because the role is more dynamic. It's more, requires more creativity and more people skills. And it's in many ways more on par with some of the experiences that folks would have in a sales or marketing role, right? So it's opening up a lot more opportunity to bring in different types of talent, different strengths, different skill sets. It's just a matter of expressing that and getting their attention. Do you have thoughts on what we can do to help create better awareness?
I think it's about creating visibility, first of all. And we try to do quite a lot of that in Canon. So we just launched a campaign that uses social media as well to talk about the value and the benefits of working for service in Canon. And we don't do that by sharing leader thoughts. We let our employees talk from across Europe. And I think that's a very powerful message. But it's only one message. It's also about creating opportunities. So we're running different programs across Europe around trainee programs, for example, to create opportunities for younger people to join. So I think it needs different approaches. And to be fair, we're currently also in the phase where we are experimenting a bit what works best. Again, it's a bit different by country as well. It's also an area where cultural differences play a big role. But we clearly need to become a lot more vocal about it. I think that's the key thing for me.
Yeah. You said we need to change our message as an employer to position service as a more dynamic part of the business. So I agree. And I think to your point, there's different levers that companies need to pull to help create this momentum. Some of them are more short term, right? But that tends to be where everyone thinks. Some need to be more long term. So that idea of visibility, that idea of representation, that idea of figuring out where and how can we show more of what service is and what career opportunities can be represented there. That's not something that might have an immediate payoff, but I think it's something that is important to the longer term. I also like what you mentioned about training. I had a woman on the podcast a few weeks back who is 5 months into her first role out of graduate school as a field service engineer. And she talked a lot about what drew her to field service, what she enjoys about it, but also talked about the fact that why didn't she see more examples in school of what different career options are and look like? And then also the challenges of getting into that role, even though it's a more entry-level role, they were still expecting experience. There were still a lot of barriers. So there's a lot that needs to be done there as well. Yeah. Well, I guess when you think about service as a dynamic business, like if you had the opportunity to try and give an elevator pitch to someone about why service is dynamic or what opportunities it can represent, what would you say?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. We need to change this narrative, and that's what we try to do. And for me, it's probably three things. It's first of all, service is a lot more than just fixing something that is broken. It's about using cutting-edge technology to predict, prevent, and solve problems. So that's one part of it. Then I'm convinced a career in service can really be a launch pad for whatever direction you want to go in your career, because you learn specialized skills in service, but also leadership. I always say a leadership role in service is probably the most difficult leadership training you have. If you, as a manager, as a relatively young manager, are in charge of a territory with 25 field service engineers, it's almost like a boot camp in leadership and how to do that. And that's an amazing experience. And thirdly, you're close to the customer. So service is not behind the scene. It's at the front line. It's with the customer. It's with innovation, delivering real, tangible results for the customer. And if that's not exciting, then I don't know what is.
Yeah. No, that's really good. The only thing I would add, and it comes really as a secondary part of the last point you mentioned, is just that I think this really is a career opportunity that can provide a major sense of purpose and fulfillment. And I think that's very important to a lot of people. And you, to your point, you have the opportunity to be working firsthand with customers, solving problems, seeing the impact that has on them and in their environments and on their employees or their customers, right? And it really is a big opportunity to make a positive difference. And I think that's also really appealing. Yeah. So I'm with you. It's a tall task, but we need to kind of create a new narrative and work on building that awareness. And I'm with you on that mission for sure. So Andy, when you look ahead to the next 1 to 3 years, what do you find most exciting about the potential that exists for Canon and also just within service as a whole?
And I think you already picked that up a bit. Now, looking ahead, I see lots of opportunities for us. So we have, looking at the breadth of our products, we have a workspace area that is evolving a lot, absolutely, and might seem challenging, but there is a demand for innovative solutions that is stronger than ever. There's a demand for new services. I didn't mention that before, but for example, security services is a big topic. As we all recognize, IT security becomes, in the last two years, the hottest topic for most customers. And in the printing area, that was for a long time just for large enterprise customers and needs. Nowadays, every company is looking for that. And we have lots of these examples with additional business opportunities for us. We have our production business that has endless potential to grow. Again, new application, new customers, a growing market. So very positive about that. And at the same time, in Canon, we have a very strong service organization already that we're now in the process of transforming and really be the engine of growth for the business, leverage all the different cutting edge technologies we have to empower our people to deliver that customer experience. And I'm convinced if we can convey that message, we will also attract these new people that we need from the market. So I'm convinced it's an exciting time to be in the printing industry. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, I would love to have you back in a year or two to share a bit about where you're at, what you've learned, what new has come up, and just stay in touch as you progress through. Really appreciate you coming on, Andy, and sharing your insights today.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Very happy to do that. Stay in touch and speak to you again.
Sounds good. Thank you. You can find more by visiting the home of the Unscripted Podcast at futureoffieldservice.com. You can browse through our most recent articles, take a look at the podcast archive. You can, of course, always find this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, any others. The Future of Field Service and Unscripted Podcast are published in partnership with IFS. You can learn more at ifs.com. As always, thank you for listening.